So we've mentioned the Enneagram before, and it's my favorite. I don't even call it personality test because it's more than that. It really is more about determining your internal motivators, your drives in life, which we really don't understand. People, if you were to read what your internal actual motivation is, you'd be like, I did not know
Mm.
that is what's been driving me, and I do these things so I can receive this. And if it's not done in the right way, it's done in a very unhealthy way, and then it's really the reasons behind a lot of things we do that we don't want to do. And I say all that to say that my Enneagram, I'm a 3. I'm an achiever, and at the root cause of an unhealthy 3 is that my achievements are my self worth. What I achieve, what I accomplish, everything I've earned is how valuable I am as a human being. Which, if you play that out, very unhealthy. And if you're not a 3, you might not be able to resonate with that. But I promise you, there's something in your life that is very much similar to your degree in whatever number you are in the Enneagram. So with a 3, a lot of times I read about it, it says workaholic. And me and Sean were just kind of laughing, but we're like, whoa, I'm not a workaholic. I mean, I just don't do that. But then if I was to step back, not from work itself, like traditional work, but work that is internal to me, achievements I want to have, that is a form of work that I'll pursue. It's work. And I am an avid reader, learner, chaser. So I can go down a rabbit hole that I love to go down, but I'll do it so long, so hard, like I will burn all the glucose out of my brain and I will burn out. Like I could feel when the burnouts happened. There's been certain times I've done it so hard, I've been in focus mode for 4 hours straight, 5 hours straight. And I'm like, I do not feel good. And I'll suddenly realize I have been zoned in on learning about this thing and all the ideas, all the writing I've done. That costs glucose, that costs energy. And I realized maybe I am a workaholic. And I've realized that. And to jump gears into, and I'm training for High Rocks, Sean is elite level fit. I'm good fit. I'm working to get into great fit and eventually elite fit. But I'd put Sean in, he's if he's not elite, he's right next to it. And will be if he's not. I would say he is. And so I'd be doing workouts with him. And as an achiever, and I love to compete and I love to hang and I don't want to let someone down. During our training, I would be trying to keep up with him and what the program was for that day. And I would do it for weeks and months on end. And I would be absolutely trashed. My body was not capable of hanging. Just like my reading, I'm going to burn out at some point. Learning, you can only do so much. And so today we're going to talk about working hard and how valuable it is. You do have to work hard. But what I've realized over the last 12 months, just 12, 18 months, rest is equally, if not more important. If you're going to, obviously you have to work hard, but if you are going to work hard, it's even more important to recover then. Because there's no point in recovering if you're not working out. If you're not working hard, there's no recovery required. But if you are working hard, then your recovery is more important. So maybe you have felt burnout before. Maybe you're a hard worker, and maybe you're not familiar with rest. But we're going to dig deep into the things that worked for me, things that worked for Sean, and the importance of helping you level up in all areas of life by really focusing in on your rest. So, yeah, take us away, Sean. Where would you start with that?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is when I think about rest or when I think about high performing and what it is that I'm focusing on, I resonate so much with what you're saying as far as digging deep into thinking and being intentional about it, calling it hyper focus in those, during the day. And so for me, it takes a lot of glycogen. It takes a lot of mental focus and cortisol, all these different things spike, just like this podcast and this episode. With the energy, time, and effort that we're putting into this, it pulls a lot of the cortisol. It pulls a lot. Afterwards, I can feel my energy going down,
Yeah.
even though it gives me energy and I enjoy doing these things. But the way I look at it is that I'm going to go 110%. I'm going to put everything on the playing field in the things that I do on a daily basis in those time blocks. But then more importantly, I'm going to make sure that I recharge the battery, meaning just like your iPhone or your Android. What do you do when you drain the battery when you're using it? You go and plug it in so you can refuel the battery. And I do this at night. At the end of the day, it's typically all the way drained, just like our Garmin, just like all these different devices. They're drained, but you've got to recharge them. Ewan, Why don't we do that in our own lives? Why don't we go and recharge and recover on a daily basis? Because let me ask a question. You have an iPhone, you have an Android, or you have a Garmin, or you have some kind of device. If you don't have it plugged in, is it going to last 48 hours?
No chance. Not
More than
nowadays.
likely, the answer is no. So you've got to, I have learned, and it's taken a long time to learn this, you've got to recharge and recover on a daily basis. And so I resonate with everything that you're saying. And I know before the podcast, you had mentioned that you experienced this firsthand with training with me. And thank you for the kind words, by the way. That
Hey,
was, he's being
all
super.
earned. I'm always in awe of your
Yeah.
fitness.
I wouldn't consider myself elite level. You know, I'm striving. That's my North Star is the elite level.
That's
Uh,
what elite level people say.
and so, but I know you experienced this firsthand when we started training together, and we really pushed the limits. We really pushed and challenged each other and just leveled each other up. But I know more so for you, and you got up to speed really quickly. How did you I'm curious, take the listeners and take myself through when you were in those moments of experiencing the like almost burnout and
Yeah.
fatigue. And like, I remember having the conversations with you early in the morning at 4 a.m. and you saying, hey, it's just part of it. It's just in my nature. I'm from Scotland. This is what we do. I'm used to it. Pain cave. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting here
Pain
going like,
cave.
what is this guy doing for recovery? You know, what is this guy strategically doing to make sure he can come back stronger tomorrow? So do you want to tap into that, pull back that layer?
Yeah, it was man, multi-leveled, multifaceted. But one of the hardest parts for me was having the conversation with you to get to the point where maybe I was like, man, I can't keep this up in my body. I'm like, man, this is going to impact our overall goal. And I really loved working out with you in the mornings. Like
Yeah,
I just wanted
same.
to so bad, and I committed also, and I didn't want to let you down. I didn't want to go back on what I had said, especially because it might look as my Enneagram 3 might look bad, and Enneagram 3s don't like to look bad. That my commitment was wavering, which it wasn't. It was actually the opposite of that. My commitment was so high that I was willing to have to change it up so that we could get our goal, and not and,
Mm,
and I really didn't want to let you down or myself down. Um, and so what led up to that point was, yeah, getting up early. And I've realized this, uh, there are different chronotypes, different types of sleep, people who sleep at different times of the day, different times of night. And there's been major studies into this. And I've tried to tweak my circadian rhythm into waking up early, months on end, months and months and months. And it's not like I just tried it for a week or two, months on end. And I always felt drained. Like I would have a hard time sleeping at night. And it's funny. You listen, think back, and you hear things that maybe your parents said, or your other family members. And my mom and dad go to bed at 11, and my sister goes to bed at 11. They wake up at 7, and I'm like, in my terms now, I'm like, no, you got to get up early. I've always known you've gotten up early, and for me, I'm like, no, the early bird gets the worm. But if the early bird gets up too early, well, then he missed some sleep, and so he's not going to be as sharp to catch that worm.
that's
And
right.
so, if your sleep type is so important to figure out, well, what is your actual chronotype? Because if you're fighting against the tide, you will burn out. And that's really
Mm,
what I was doing. I was fighting against the tide. And so I've had to come to terms with waking up a little later, which I actually don't like, because then I feel behind. And so I've been coming to terms and having the conversation with, well, you can't feel bad about that, because it is what it is. And I've played around, and this seems to be the time where I feel at my best. So um, I had, in my early 30s, was doing CrossFit really hard, and it was the only other time I could reference where I had trained so hard, just 5 days a week, waking up, hitting the gym, blasting my body to pieces every single day because I could. And I remember one day it took me 15, 20, I don't actually know the amount of time it took me to get out the car, because I was just staring at the steering wheel in my driveway.
mm.
And then I suddenly realized, this is what burnout, physical training burnout, is. I was totally disconnected from my body, my sleep. The recovery was just non-existent, and it was a terrible place. Couldn't focus on work, couldn't do all the things. So I scaled all that back. So I truly know what burnout is, and I tasted it training for High Rocks. So I caught it pretty early. And so I scaled back, and now it's all hands on deck for recovery. Like, I just realized how important it is when you're working hard, and that's true for work too. Like, through the day, you know what? I'm gonna hold back on that. We'll get into that for work, but yeah, what would you say to that?
Yeah. So Man, I resonate with so much what you're saying as far as like the training and the overtraining and just wanting to put it all out there, because we think how you do one thing is how you do everything. So when you're training hard, whether it's CrossFit or in business or even in life, it's like I'm working harder. And so we've heard terms like work harder and uh work
No
harder,
pain,
not
no
smart,
gain.
work smarter, not harder, right? No pain,
Yeah.
no gain, and all these different things. And it's like, yeah, no pain, no gain, hustle, grind, make things happen. And I think to a certain degree, you've got to have that grit, you got to have that resilience, and to really push through that pain cave. And when you're in those moments, but I've also learned, in the whole reason for today's episode is like the misconception behind that is like, okay, yeah, those things are important to a certain degree, but you have to know your limits. You have to know, where do I draw the line in the sand? Where do I need to make sure I'm intentional about recovering, my sleep, my exercising, my nutrition? Maybe I'm overtraining. And me and you've talked about this behind the scenes, where I legitimately, genuinely love freaking training. If I could train 4, 5, 6 hours a day, I would, you
Yes.
know, and but I don't, right? So it's taking me time to get to the 2 a days, only because I'm able to be intentional about recovering. And so how that relates to business and how that relates to life is the same thing. So if you're a new, maybe you're starting a business, or maybe you're in a new role at work or leadership, whatever it may be, you're applying new skill sets, which takes a lot more energy. Well, a lot of times we find ourselves working really hard at it because we care and we have a goal in mind. And then we don't take enough time to step back and go, oh, dude, I haven't recovered. I haven't
Mm,
taken the time, energy, and effort to plug my battery in to
yeah.
recover. And that could look like a bunch of different things. And I'm curious, I'm going to get to my question with you, Ewan. But for me, it's managing that stress so I can show up stronger in these different aspects of life. And so whether that's a massage, or whether that's meditation, breath work, whether that's shutting my computer at 4 o'clock, my phone, do not disturb, it goes immediately on do not disturb. And then I'm focused on whatever it is I'm doing at that moment. So these are all different things that I'm able to manage. So, which at the same time, that allowed me to show up stronger and work smarter, I believe, because I'm still going to work hard, Ewan. I'm still going to work hard. I'm still going to train
Yes.
hard, but I'm working smarter. Here's why: because I'm doing these different things that allow me to show up stronger, whether that's sleep, well being, nutrition, meditate, all these different things. I say this all the time. When I get a weekly massage, I used to get two massages a week. People are like, "What?" They look at me like I'm crazy. And then now I've backed down to a weekly massage. And I tell everybody that I talk to about massages, I'm like, I'm such a big believer in it. And it's for somebody saying, well, I don't have the money, right? 50, 60, $70. And I said, I remember saying every time somebody tell me something, I was like, I can't afford not to, because I'm not able to just show up and be the best version of myself in these different aspects of life. And to me, what's important is feeling good, right? And if I'm not feeling good, then it's hard to really live out my life's purpose. So I'm curious with you, man, what are some things that you've put into place for stress management and been super intentional about to allow you to level up in these different areas of life? Because man, just watching your journey in the last 12 to 18 to 24 months, and I know a lot of our friends are in our family and our community, and even myself, just being front row seats, I'm like, dude, this guy is leveling up, not only in business but also in his marriage, in his relationships, and a servant leader, and in fitness. I'm like, man, the sky's the limit in this guy. What's he doing? What's the key ingredient, Ewan? What's
It's so funny to say, because man, I maybe it's my Scottish nature. I'm like, man, I need to step it up in all areas. Like, I really just think that all the time. I'm like, man, I'm so behind here. I need to, and not from a bad place. I've learned to not do it from a bad place, but more from like, man, I see where I could be, and I want that.
yeah,
So I'm always looking about where I could be. I don't often take stock. Like, even right now, I'm probably the fittest I've ever been, and I'm like, man, I got such a long ways to go, and I'm looking forward to every step of getting there. I want it today, but I know it's not possible. But in saying that, if I'm going to get there, then I know the recovery is such a huge portion. And only reason I know that is because I know what burnout feels like, and I know what it does to my training and to my goals, and all, and not just training but other things too. And man, you asked the question earlier, why do we do that? We know need to plug our phone in. And I was thinking about that for a minute, and like, but we don't do that. We don't plug ourselves in to recharge and recover. The reason why we don't do it, I've got it, man. This is it. The
let's hear it.
button.
Let's hear it.
the little green battery at the top of the right hand corner tells you when it's getting low to plug it
Mm,
in. We're not good. There's no graph to tell us that we're getting low on the chart. We're
mm,
just
mm.
cruising through the day. We're not aware. We're not paying attention, and
Yes.
so it just gets there. And before you know it, you're on zero. You're
Yeah.
toast, and so then that's why we flop. That's why we make bad decisions. We've got no energy, and so if
Mm,
we could see
so
every
true.
day, oh, I'm about 25%. Great, I put 75% effort into the day. Now is the time to scale back for the day. Relax. Don't do anything over strenuous, and start recovering so I can get back to 100% for tomorrow.
Yes.
And so I think gauging where you're at through the day, and that's something I've been working on. One of the main things, and we've talked about this many times before. You've got it on your finger. I got one on mine, the Oura Ring. And now I even watch my Garmin watch because I wear that to sleep, and it gives me scores. So the first thing in the morning, I can tell how did I do in my sleep last night. How did I recover? Because that's what sleep is. It's recovering and recouping.
That's
And
right.
man, the studies say I think it's 10 days. I think the longest someone's gone without sleep and they died. That's around about the 10-day
Wow.
mark. If you don't sleep, you die. Like
Yeah.
that's
That's how
and that tells you
important it
something
is.
right there.
Yep.
Yeah. They say if you don't sleep, if you have a bad night of sleep, or it might be 48 hours or two bad nights of sleep, you're the equivalent of driving drunk. So if that's
Dang.
just 2 days. So if that
Wow.
tells you something, your brain's not working. The brain has a washing. It washes itself at night. What's the fluid? Uh, it's not the I forget what it is. I'll have to
Yeah.
put in the notes, but
Yeah.
it washes the brain out. Right, it keeps the plaque
Interesting.
from building up, and it keeps it healthy, fresh, good to go. And so, if you don't sleep, you're not getting that, and so it accumulates this fatigue, which impacts the body, releasing chemicals and whatnot. So I feel like I've done a really good job of getting my sleep dialed in. And as much as I hate it, that we can't eat the way we want to eat, that is just it's the second thing to sleeping, is eating good. Like, I've never really connected how important it is. I've always known it's important. I could preach all day long how important it is, but when you really connect to how your body to what's actually showing up in the real world with eating, that makes a huge difference. And then I'd say for me, the intention of, kind of mentioned to it, like, what's possible for me, where could I be, and does that entice me to want to chase that? And we've always been that way. Way before Level Up and Live, we were leveling up and living.
Yeah.
That we've always talked about. Always, what's next? What are we working on? What are we doing? That we just slapped the name on it of what we were actually doing. And so we were always like, how could we be great in all areas of life? And so it's just been a long journey. Like, a lot of the results today have accumulated over a decade,
Yeah.
and my next decade, I intend on being that much farther in those areas as well. So yeah, sleep, nutrition, and, like I said, working hard, in any area. Just the clarity, the intention is how you get there.
Yeah. It's so
What would you
true.
say?
And what I'm hearing you say is with the intention and then the sleep and the nutrition. It's funny because it's like we always keep coming back to that, but it's
Yeah.
so true. And it's like, okay, well, if you envision listening to this, like you're the future of yourself, what you're eating right now, and then that makes the small little tweaks, the small little habits on, when I say working harder, most people think, and myself included, was, oh, I need to work harder, I need to work longer, I need to work stronger, I need to do all these things, I need to,
Yeah.
work. Well, what does that actually mean? What are you working on? But what I'm hearing you say
Mm,
is, no, Ewan, I'm working harder on my sleep. I'm working harder on my nutrition. I'm
yeah.
working harder on being smart about my exercising, knowing that I shouldn't be waking up at 4. I should be waking up at 5:30 based on my chronotype.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're working harder on, is what best fits you. So you listening to this, where can you work harder and smarter? And that's what it comes down to. I think that's what's going to drive the needle in these different areas of life, is working harder on those things by asking yourself the questions that's going to get you to where you want to go, and by working harder, and then of course it's like the forced recovery is so important for me. It's like, whether it's taking a nature walk, that's a big one, 30-minute walk in the afternoon time. Or another big one for me, it's like that drains my energy, is the phone. The phone is a tool. I look at it as a tool, and I
Yes.
know a lot of people listening to this, they use it as a tool, whether it's scrolling social media, getting different content ideas, whether that's posting content if you're a business owner, or maybe they're trying to receive news or communicate with their customers, whatever it may be. It's like, okay, that's a tool and you're working hard with it, but where are you working hard to make sure you eliminate and remove those distractions, during the day so you can get away from that? Because you can go on here and find out your screen time. And if you're upwards of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a day, right? To me, that's a red flag. And that's where I used to be. I used to be 7, 8 hours a day. Then I
Yeah.
was like, dude, I need to dial this back, right? And that's by working hard on making sure that I remove my phone in the location that I'm at, or leave. Kendra asks me all the time. She's like, when we go to church or we go into a restaurant, she'll have her phone on her, which sometimes I'm thankful because we'll take a picture, we'll snap a shot, or maybe we'll meet somebody and they're like, enter contact information. But for me, it's important because I'm working super hard, and even though it's uncomfortable and most people they're bringing their phone with them, but I'm working hard on saying, nope, I'm leaving my phone in the truck. That's, to me, that's working hard on trying to remove something that's going to pull my peace. Because if the notifications are going off when I'm trying to have a conversation with my wife, it's not doing its job. Or I'm not working smarter. I'm working harder and less smarter on just that small area. So just being intentional about that, I think, is going to play or pay huge dividends for anybody that's wanting to work harder on the systems and processes that allow you to recover and plug that charger in to give you life, to give
Yeah.
you
To get
that
your
energy.
battery
Get
back charged. I'm going to start doing
exactly.
that going forward. I'm really going to start like connecting. Okay, if I was to gauge roughly where's my green battery in the top right corner of my life today,
Mm,
man, I got to be honest. It's is it a 12? Because if it
yes.
is, but really, I'm trying to. Really, the goal should be for me is don't let it get past 25%.
Yes.
Because if you start dipping into that 80, 85, well, if you're to do that on like your heart rate levels, well, that's you're getting into zone 4.
Yep.
Zone 5, if you're getting low on the battery, and you can only sustain those levels for very short periods of time before you really need major recovery. But if you
Mm,
keep it in the zone 2, zone 3 areas, you can still put that aerobic energy in, and
that's
it
right.
can help you sustain for longer. And if we were thinking about those terms, like for me on the battery, imagining that for my life, if I stay in the zone of I've used 75% of my energy for today, I've got to really be careful for the rest of the day and really start doing things that pay me back because I've worked hard and now put into energy. And we're talking about a lot of things to do right now. But I mentioned this is an accumulation of over a decade worth of focusing. Same for you, well over a decade of all that energy and effort. And so that is major overwhelming. If you're listening to this and you're not anywhere. If you haven't started your journey or you're only just starting to dabble in it, if I was to think back, well, how did it all kind of unfold? I
Mhm.
certainly didn't think about it all at one go. It was just one little thing
That's
after
right.
another. I remember going down the HRV rabbit hole like 4, 5, 6 years ago. It's like, man, HRV, I had no clue what that was, that there was a variance in between the heartbeats, and the more the variance, the better it is. And that stress makes it more like a metronome, which you don't want, like tick, 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 tick. You don't want it to be like that. You want it to be staggered, varied. And
Yeah.
and so I learned all about that and just absorbed it, and then I kind of implemented it into my life and focusing on, well, how could I improve those things? And this is over a period of weeks, months, listening podcasts, reading books and whatnot about how that impacts me. And that's me. That's how I roll. That might not be how somebody else does it, but the point being, it was just one little thing that I adopted into my life. And so once I really had that under control, I looked into something else. Like, oh, now I'm going down this route. Like, how does glucose impact my energy levels, my blood glucose? And then,
Mm.
I study about that. And then, okay, now I've got that under control. And in my wife, how am I showing up for how do I speak to her when she does this and I respond X? Why am I doing that? I don't like how I'm being. I don't.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, me and Kendra. So we've learned here recently, like we have a people call date nights, right? So we're me and Kendra. I feel like we're just like rebels. We're like going against the grain of sand. Like we do the opposite of what everybody's doing, right? It's like people call it date nights. We call it date mornings. And so the reason we do that is exactly with what we're talking about in today's episode is recovering. And so for us, like we're exhausted. We leave it all on the playing field by 5 o'clock when she gets home. I'll have dinner ready for her, and I'm usually exhausted. We exchange, words. We ask each other some questions, ask each other how each of our day went, and then typically within like 30 to 45 minutes, we went from 35% of making sure that we're super intentional about asking about each other's day to 15 to 10%, and by 6 o'clock we're wrapping things up. We're fixing to read, and we've been up since 3 or 4 o'clock that early that morning. But my whole point here is here recently, we've been super intentional about, okay, let's work harder and let's work smarter on where it is that we show up the best version of ourselves in our marriage. And so we do that by, for me, it's like I used to think it was a misconception of like, I got to have this conversation. I got to sit at dinner with my wife every single night for 7 days a week. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, we're in our lives, like we're being honest with ourselves. We're in our lives where we're working really hard and we're serving, we're living our life of purpose. And as long as I'm the type of guy, it's like in our marriage, if I can have a 30-minute quality conversation with my wife and ask her 10 questions and she can ask me 10 questions, that's going to be better than the alternative, which is, how was your day? That was good. How was your day? Good. Let's watch Netflix. Right. And so what we've started implementing by learning from working smarter and working harder by recovering is we are morning people. So we have those conversations in the morning and we do this on a weekly basis. We'll have our coffee dates right before church. Ewan, let me tell you something. It has been the biggest game changer by doing this on a weekly basis. We did it after the Level Up and Live Run Club. We did it after this past Saturday. We went to breakfast together, and then we did it again on Sunday. In that 60 to 90 minutes, we get done more in quality conversations than we do for an entire month of conversations of just asking how you're doing, because we're working harder and smarter in those quality. And even if you're listening to this, I'm going to equip you with something. You ready for this? So if you struggle with questions sometimes with your spouse, right? Because you see them all the time, and it's typically the same questions. One of the things that me and my wife started implementing a couple months ago was uh, two things. One, we got a card game. It's called Deeper Connection. I'll have to put it in the show notes, but I don't remember the name of it. Put the link in the show notes. But it's a card game that has questions on there that you can ask your wife. So you're taking, remember, it's removing the obstacles of why don't you dig deeper with your wife or your spouse? Well, I don't know what questions to ask other than how was your day? Well, you're not digging deeper emotionally, spiritually, mentally, in all these different questions. So we got the cards, and the second thing is we started ChatGPT. Put 10 questions. Ask me, what you know about me in ChatGPT as a loving husband, compassionate. Give me 10 questions with the different areas of life. And this can be goals. This can be, something fun, something adventurous. In 2025, we did this past Sunday, and we've done it several times, but we always try to change it up. We were able to ask each other out, make notes. And in that 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I learned so much about her, right? And I've been with her for 12 plus years, but it's allowed us to dive deeper because we were working harder and working smarter about those quality of conversations. And it's just been the biggest game changer. And I hope somebody listening to this, just work harder on thinking outside the box and being intentional about those questions so you can ask your spouse that and just watch things change, because you may hear things in those questions that you've never heard before in the last 12 years. And now you can work together uh, to do those things in 2025. So, well, yeah, what would be one thing that you've implemented, since we're talking about marriage right now and working harder and working smarter, what is something that you guys have really mastered for the last 15 to 20 years in y'all's relationship that you might be able to share with the listeners? Yeah. Yeah. Mm, yes. 100%. Yeah. No. Well, think about it, man. It like I think about it when I think of working harder and then resting and recovery. It's like, okay, well, I'm working harder, but I'm not working smarter on these different areas of life, it's very applicable because if we're working harder and then not smarter, or working harder and not recovering, then to me, it's like, what are we doing here? You're just a cog in the wheel. It's the rat race. It's doing the same thing and then expecting different results. We wonder why we're not having a deeper connection with our spouse. We're wondering why our business is not moving. We're wondering why we're not, losing weight. It's because we may be just treading water. Well, what do you do when you tread water? You're just working hard. You think you're doing the right things, Ewan. I thought I was doing the right things in my marriage. I'm having the 30-minute conversations at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's the same questions, and because I'm tired, I'm exhausted. So when I think about working harder and then focus and then working smarter and then having that recovery, it's like, where do I show up the best version of myself and equipping myself and the people listening to this? It's in those moments where you have the energy and being intentional about what it is that you're trying to do in these different areas of life. And just for that example, it's in my marriage, it's like, okay, I need to be super intentional about working harder, working smarter, and then making sure I'm recovering. And like you said, I mean, it's a great point where, man, if I can remove that, that mindset or that barrier or that obstacle of my marriage being healthy versus unhealthy, man, that's, to me, that weighs a lot on your psychological stress. That weighs a lot on your HRV. You're wondering why your resting heart rate's going up and your HRV is going down, and you wonder why you're stressed out because subconsciously your marriage is not okay. You see? And so to me, that is a recovery. And I need to be able to be intentional about working hard on that so I can recover. Because if I know, Ewan, that I am in a healthy marriage, that me and my wife's love tanks are full. She's at 75, or she's at 85%, 95%, and I'm working on being intentional about that. To me, that's recovery because I know that then she's in a good place. Because if not, then I feel like I'm just treading water. Maybe I'm missing the beat there, but I feel, yeah, yes, yeah, yep, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yep. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Mm. Yep. Yep. Well said, man. Yeah. So recap. What is one question, one question or one thing that you can implement in your life for as far as a habit and a recovery method on a daily basis so you can come back 1% better than you were yesterday, 1% stronger, and in these different areas of life, and just get super clear on that and just try that over and over. And like you and said, share it with us, DM us, message us, let us know your challenges, and let us know what recovery methods working for you after maybe applying some of these different tools and mindset on what's working. And like I said, I'll have to get the name of the cards, but man, we've shared that with other married couples, and it's been a game changer for them. It's been a game changer for us, and so it's just really leveled up our marriage, and it's allowed us to really recover from spinning our wheels of, oh, how do we level up, and to me it's like asking the right questions, because that's the asking good quality questions is an important aspect of a good quality life, in marriage and business and friendships and all these other things. So outside of that, thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. You're a true, top 5%er. You're a true, wanting to level up and live your best life. We really appreciate you. We're grateful for you. Make sure you share this with a friend, a family member, anybody in the community. Leave us a positive review on what you liked about the show. Outside of that, level up and live.